Her stepsisters burned her mating ball invitation. By midnight, the Alpha King was at her door. Hello, everyone. Before we step into today's story, we have one small favor to ask. Please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story from our channel. It takes only a moment, it costs nothing, and it helps us continue bringing you more dramatic, emotional, and unforgettable stories of love and destiny. Your support truly means the world to us. And before we begin, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from and what time it is where you are right now. We love seeing how far these stories travel and discovering who is joining us from across the world. Now, settle in, and let's begin today's story. You really thought the Alpha King wanted you there? Vanessa Whitmore held the silver invitation above the fireplace, smiling as the flames curled toward its edge. Clara stopped halfway down the staircase, one hand still resting on the banister. For a heartbeat, she could not understand what she was seeing. Then she recognized the pale envelope, the royal crest, and her own name written across the front in shimmering ink. Vanessa, don't. Her voice came out softer than she intended. Haley stood beside the fireplace in her blue mating ball gown, staring at the floor. Vanessa only tilted her head. Why not? Everyone knows invitations are sent according to the household registry. Someone at the palace made a mistake. Clara crossed the room quickly, but Vanessa released the envelope before she could reach it. The invitation slipped into the fire. Silver paper folded inward beneath the orange glow. Clara froze. For 3 weeks, she had repaired her mother's old ivory dress by hand, sewing loose beads back into place after everyone else had gone to sleep. She had never imagined the Alpha King would choose her at the ball. She wasn't foolish. She simply wanted, for one evening, to enter a room without being told she belonged somewhere smaller. There, Vanessa said, smoothing her crimson gown. Problem solved. Outside, carriage wheels crunched across the frost-covered drive. Their stepmother, Margaret, called impatiently from the doorway. Haley finally looked at Clara, guilt flickering across her face. I'm sorry, she whispered. Clara looked toward the fireplace instead. Are you? Haley had no answer. Margaret entered, took in the scene, and understood immediately. Her expression barely changed. Girls, the carriage is waiting. Mother, Vanessa burned my invitation. Margaret adjusted one of her gloves. Then there is little point discussing it now. Something inside Clara went very still. Not broken. Still. She watched them leave beneath the cold December moon, their laughter fading as the carriage rolled towards Silverpine Palace, nearly 12 miles away. Only after the house became silent did Clara kneel beside the hearth. Most of the invitation had become ash. She reached for the iron poker, intending only to clear the remains, when something bright caught her eye. In the center of the blackened paper rested a small silver seal. Clara stared. The envelope was gone. The ribbon had burned. Even the royal crest had disappeared. But this symbol remained untouched. A crescent moon surrounded by 7 tiny stars. She had never seen it before. The moment Clara touched it, warmth traveled through her fingertips and settled strangely beneath her heartbeat. She pulled her hand back. The silver mark glimmered once. Then again, far away, beneath a ceiling of crystal chandeliers, King Nathaniel Ashford entered the most important mating ball in a generation. Hundreds bowed as one. Music stopped. Every invited woman waited for him to choose. Yet Nathaniel took only 3 steps before the ancient moonstone ring on his right hand suddenly burned warm. He stopped. Royal Archivist Elias Ward noticed immediately. Your Majesty? Nathaniel looked across the magnificent ballroom, his expression sharpening. He could not explain how he knew. He only knew with absolute certainty that someone was missing. Back at Whitmore House, Clara closed her fingers around the impossible silver seal. For the first time in centuries, the forgotten mark of the Alpha King's Luna had awakened, and neither Clara nor the king yet understood what had called it back into the world. Clara remained beside the fireplace long after the carriage disappeared beyond the snow-dusted trees. The silver seal rested in her palm, warm despite the winter air slipping through the old window frames. She should have been angry. Perhaps part of her was. Yet anger had never stayed comfortably inside Clara Whitmore. She had learned too young that bitterness could become another kind of cage. At 23, she had spent years being described by what she lacked. Her wolf was quiet. Her scent was faint. She had no impressive rank, no wealthy inheritance, and no talent anyone in the Whitmore household considered useful. Vanessa could command attention simply by entering a room. Haley could charm almost anyone within minutes. Clara noticed different things. She noticed when the elderly groundskeeper favored his left knee and quietly carried the heavier baskets for him. She noticed when Margaret developed headaches before storms and left peppermint tea outside her room without expecting thanks. She noticed when Haley laughed too loudly because she was nervous and when Vanessa became cruelest whenever she feared being overlooked. People called Clara overly sensitive. Her mother had once called it wisdom. Strength tells you what someone can do, she had told Clara years ago. Kindness tells you what they choose to do. Clara had carried those words longer than she had carried anything else. She rose and crossed to the small sewing table near the window. Her repaired ivory dress hung nearby, untouched. She ran her fingers across one carefully restored bead, then looked down at the silver seal again. The symbol seemed almost alive beneath the moonlight. 7 stars. 1 crescent. No royal insignia. No name. She wrapped it in a handkerchief and placed it beside her mother's old wooden jewelry box. She could have saddled a horse and followed the others. Silver Pine Palace was nearly 12 miles away, and the roads were clear enough. She could arrive late and explain everything. The thought lasted only seconds. Clara looked at the empty doorway through which her family had left. She would not spend tonight chasing people who had already decided she should disappear. At the palace, Vanessa was doing everything possible to be seen. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over polished marble, while musicians played beneath silver banners. Hundreds of guests filled the grand ballroom, yet an uneasy silence followed Nathaniel Ashford as he approached the ceremonial dais. He was accustomed to silence. Kings often received it. This silence felt different. Wrong. Nathaniel stopped before the ancient moonstone pedestal. According to tradition, the stone would glow once every invited candidate had entered the hall, formally opening the mating ball. Tonight, it remained dark. Elias Ward stepped closer, his gray eyes narrowing behind his spectacles. The registry shows every household accounted for, he murmured. Nathaniel glanced at the moonstone ring on his hand. It was still warm. Then the registry is wrong. Across the ballroom, Vanessa watched him with carefully controlled anticipation. Nathaniel did not notice her. His attention remained on the silent stone. Check it again, he ordered quietly. Elias bowed and hurried toward the royal records chamber. Back at Whitmore House, Clara had just turned away from the window when the silver seal suddenly shone through the folded handkerchief. She uncovered it slowly. This time, the 7 stars illuminated one after another. Clara's breath caught. Miles away, the ancient pedestal inside Silver Pine Palace answered with a single pulse of silver light. Every conversation stopped. Elias froze at the records chamber door. Nathaniel stared at the glowing stone. Somewhere beyond those palace walls was a woman the ceremony itself refused to begin without. The silver light vanished almost as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Clara alone with the quiet ticking of the mantel clock. 10:15. She unfolded the handkerchief and studied the seal again, but it had returned to ordinary silver. For a moment, she wondered whether loneliness had finally persuaded her imagination to become generous. Then she touched the crescent, and a strange calm moved through her, not excitement, not fear, but the unmistakable feeling that something far beyond Whitmore House had noticed her. Clara closed her fingers around it. Whatever you are not getting any more answers from me tonight. The absurdity of speaking to a piece of metal almost made her smile. She carried the untouched ivory dress upstairs and changed into a simple cream sweater and long skirt. The ball no longer mattered. At least, that was what she told herself. Yet when she passed the mirror, she stopped. Her mother's restored dress hung behind her like the outline of a life she had nearly been allowed to enter. Clara felt the disappointment then. She let herself feel it. Being dignified did not mean pretending something had not hurt. Downstairs, she made tea and sat beside the window overlooking the frozen garden. At Silver Pine Palace, the mood had changed entirely. The musicians had resumed playing, but uncertainty traveled through the ballroom faster than any rumor. Nathaniel had not begun the selection. He had not danced. He had barely spoken. Vanessa watched him from beside Margaret and Haley, struggling to hide her irritation. He is waiting for something, Haley whispered. Vanessa kept smiling toward the dais. Kings make people wait. No, Haley said softly. I think he is waiting for someone. Vanessa turned sharply. Before she could answer, Elias Ward appeared beside Nathaniel carrying the original invitation ledger. Nathaniel opened it beneath the moonstone pedestal. Every household name had been marked upon arrival. Then Elias pointed to one entry near the bottom. Whitmore household. 3 eligible women registered. Only 2 arrival seals. Nathaniel's gaze lifted. Names. Elias read them quietly. Vanessa Whitmore. Haley Whitmore. Clara Whitmore. Something changed in Nathaniel's expression at the final name. His ring warmed again. Across 12 miles of winter darkness, Clara suddenly looked down at the silver seal beside her teacup. One star had begun glowing. Clara Whitmore, Nathaniel repeated. Vanessa heard him. The color left her face. Nathaniel noticed. So did Elias. The king descended from the dais and stopped before the Whitmore family. Margaret bowed immediately. Vanessa followed with practiced grace. Haley could barely raise her eyes. Which of you is Clara? Nathaniel asked. Silence answered him. Vanessa recovered first. Your Majesty, my stepsister was unable to attend. Unable? Nathaniel's voice remained calm. That somehow made Haley more uncomfortable. Her invitation was lost, Vanessa said. Haley closed her eyes. Nathaniel studied them, not with anger, but with the patient attention of a man accustomed to hearing what people avoided saying. Elias leaned toward him. Your Majesty, there is another problem. He showed Nathaniel the ledger. Beside Clara's name, a faint crescent had appeared in silver ink. Elias looked genuinely shaken. The palace did not place that mark there. Nathaniel stared at it. What does it mean? Elias hesitated. I have seen it only once, in a manuscript older than the kingdom. Vanessa's confidence finally cracked. It was only an invitation. Elias looked at her. No, Miss Whitmore. Apparently, it was not. At 10:43, Nathaniel closed the ledger. Prepare my carriage. The ballroom fell silent again. Margaret looked up in alarm. Your Majesty, where are you going? Nathaniel glanced once at Clara's glowing name. To find the woman everyone here seems determined I should not meet. By 11 o'clock, the mating ball had become a ceremony without a purpose. Nathaniel stood beneath the ancient moonstone arch while hundreds of guests pretended not to watch him. The pedestal had pulsed only once, then fallen dark again, as though the old magic itself refused to continue. Elias remained beside the open ledger, tracing the silver crescent beside Clara's name without touching it. You said you recognized this mark, Nathaniel said quietly. Elias glanced toward the crowded ballroom. Not here, Your Majesty. Nathaniel understood immediately. They moved into the adjoining library, where the music became a distant murmur behind heavy oak doors. Elias crossed to a locked cabinet and removed a narrow book bound in faded white leather. The first moon accord, he said. Most scholars consider it ceremonial folklore. Nathaniel opened the fragile volume. You do not. I did until tonight. Elias turned several pages and stopped at an illustration of a crescent surrounded by 7 stars. It was identical to the mark beside Clara's name. Beneath it were 3 words written in an older dialect. Nathaniel waited. Elias swallowed. Alpha King's Luna. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. Luna is a title. Today, yes. According to this text, it was once something more. Elias pointed to a faded passage. The earliest kings did not simply choose their lunas. On rare occasions, the moon recognized one before the king ever met her. Nathaniel looked toward the ballroom doors. And Clara Whitmore has this mark. Apparently. Why? Elias closed the book slowly. That is the part one cannot answer. The next page is missing. Nathaniel stared at him. Missing. Removed deliberately, sometime generations ago. For the first time that evening, Nathaniel felt something colder than uncertainty. Someone had erased part of the kingdom's oldest history, and tonight that forgotten history had written Clara Whitmore's name into a royal ledger. He returned to the ballroom. Vanessa was waiting exactly where he had left her, though her confidence had faded. Margaret stood rigid beside her. Haley looked miserable. Nathaniel stopped before them. Miss Vanessa, tell me exactly what happened to Clara's invitation. Vanessa glanced at her mother. It was misplaced. Haley's breath caught. Nathaniel heard it. He turned toward her. Miss Haley. She looked at Vanessa, then at the floor. It was not misplaced. Vanessa whispered her name in warning, but Haley continued. Vanessa burned it. Margaret closed her eyes. Nathaniel remained completely still. Why? Haley's voice trembled. Because Clara was invited too. Nathaniel looked at Vanessa. That cannot be the entire reason. Vanessa's composure finally slipped. She does not belong here. Clara has no standing. No remarkable wolf. No useful connections. She would have embarrassed our family. Nathaniel considered those words for several seconds. Interesting. Vanessa looked almost hopeful. Your Majesty? You have told me everything Clara lacks and nothing about who she is. Vanessa had no answer. Nathaniel turned away. He had heard enough. Outside, attendants were already preparing the royal carriage. Elias followed him into the entrance hall. Your Majesty, tradition requires you to remain until midnight. Nathaniel pulled on his winter coat. Tradition also required every invited woman to be present. He looked back toward the glowing crescent in the ledger. Tonight, tradition failed her first. Meanwhile, Clara sat alone beside the dying fireplace, unaware that the most powerful man in the Northern Territories had just left a ballroom filled with people hoping to be chosen. The silver seal in her hand grew warmer. 11:27. Beyond the windows, snow began drifting through the darkness. Then, somewhere along the distant road, Clara heard the faint sound of approaching carriage wheels. The carriage wheels grew louder, then passed beyond the front gate without slowing. Clara released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Of course, the northern road served half a dozen estates before reaching Whitmore House. She almost laughed at herself for imagining that anyone would be visiting at this hour. She returned the silver seal to the table, but the strange warmth remained in her fingertips. 11:32. At that same moment, Nathaniel's carriage turned away from the main road and entered a narrow lane lined with snow-covered pines. Elias sat opposite him, holding the ancient book carefully against his coat. There is something else you should know, Elias said. Nathaniel looked up. You have developed an unfortunate habit of saying that tonight. Elias almost smiled, but his expression quickly became serious. The palace did not create the crescent mark. You already told me that. I mean, we could not have created it. Elias opened the book to the surviving illustration. The method was lost more than 300 years ago. No living royal archivist knows how the Luna seal was made. Nathaniel glanced toward the dark countryside beyond the window. Then how did it appear on Clara's invitation? That is precisely what concerns me. Elias lowered his voice. Royal invitations are ordinary until they receive the king's crest. Clara's letter left the palace with nothing unusual on it. Whatever marked her did so afterward. Nathaniel's ring warmed again. So, someone altered it. Perhaps. Elias hesitated. Or something recognized her. Silence filled the carriage. Nathaniel had spent most of his life separating superstition from responsibility. A kingdom could not be governed by legends. Yet legends were not supposed to illuminate royal ledgers or awaken stones that had remained dormant for centuries. What did the old Lunas do? He asked. Elias looked surprised. The records are incomplete. Tell me what survived. Elias considered his answer. They were described as listeners. Nathaniel frowned. Listeners? Not to words. To something beneath them. The oldest account says an Alpha King's Luna could hear truth beneath the wolf. Nathaniel leaned back. That sounds like poetry. Most ancient truths do after enough people forget what they meant. At Whitmore House, Clara heard a soft scratching at the kitchen door. She opened it and found a small gray fox sheltering beneath the porch roof from the snow. You picked a terrible night to wander, she murmured. She placed a shallow dish of water near the doorway and found a clean towel for the animal to rest on without bringing it inside. As Clara crouched nearby, an unexpected sensation moved through her. Not words. Not exactly. Fear. Exhaustion. Trust struggling against instinct. She stared at the fox. The feeling disappeared. Clara slowly stood. I am definitely tired. Then headlights swept across the front windows. This time, the sound did not pass. A carriage stopped outside. Clara's heartbeat quickened. 11:56. She approached the window and saw a dark royal carriage beneath the falling snow. The crest on its door caught the porch light. Her breath stopped. Two guards remained near the gate, while one tall man stepped down, followed by an older gentleman carrying a book. The tall stranger looked toward the house. Even through the glass, Clara felt something shift inside her, quiet but undeniable. Nathaniel felt it too. He stopped halfway up the walkway. Elias noticed. Your Majesty? Nathaniel did not answer immediately. For the first time all evening, The restless warmth in his ring became perfectly still. Inside, Clara picked up the unburned silver seal. Outside, Nathaniel climbed the final porch step. The mantel clock began its slow approach toward midnight, and Clara understood only one thing with certainty. Whoever had come to her door had not arrived by accident. 3 measured knocks sounded through Whitmore House just as the mantel clock reached midnight. Clara stood motionless for 1 heartbeat, the silver seal enclosed in her hand. Then she opened the door. Snow drifted beyond the porch, softening the dark road and bare trees beneath the moonlight. The man standing before her wore a black winter coat over formal evening clothes, silver embroidery visible at his collar. Clara recognized him immediately. Every household in the Northern Territories knew that face. King Nathaniel Ashford. Instinct told her to bow. Surprise made her forget. Nathaniel seemed almost grateful for that. For several seconds, neither spoke. Clara had expected the Alpha King to feel overwhelming, perhaps cold. Instead, what struck her first was his stillness. He looked at her as though he had traveled 12 miles not to inspect an omega, but to understand a question. "Clara Whitmore?" he asked. "Yes." His gaze dropped to her closed hand. "Were you invited to the mating ball tonight?" Clara's fingers tightened. "I was." "And you chose not to attend?" There was no accusation in his voice. That mattered. "The choice was made for me." Nathaniel's expression changed almost imperceptibly. "Your stepsister told me she burned your invitation." Clara looked past him toward Elias, then toward the guards waiting respectfully near the gate. "Vanessa admitted that?" "Her sister did." Clara lowered her eyes. "Haley." Nathaniel waited. He did not demand an explanation. That surprised her more than his arrival. Finally, Clara opened her hand. This survived. The Luna seal rested against her palm. Elias inhaled sharply. Nathaniel did not move. "May I see it?" he asked. Clara noticed the wording. "May I?" A king who could command nearly anything had asked permission. She extended her hand. The instant Nathaniel's fingertips touched the edge of the seal, all 7 stars illuminated. Silver light spilled gently across Clara's palm. Nathaniel's moonstone ring answered with the same glow. Elias stared between them. "Extraordinary." Clara pulled her hand back, and the light faded. "What is happening?" Nathaniel looked at Elias, but the archivist remained silent. "We do not know enough yet," Nathaniel said. Clara studied him carefully. She had spent years listening to what people meant rather than merely what they said. Nathaniel was telling the truth. More importantly, he was not pretending certainty simply because he was king. "Then why are you here?" she asked. Snow whispered against the porch railing. Nathaniel glanced toward the distant road before meeting her eyes again. "Because someone tried very hard to keep you from meeting me." His voice softened. "I came to learn why." Clara had imagined many versions of this night while repairing her mother's dress. None included standing in a cream sweater at midnight while the Alpha King waited outside her door like an ordinary guest. "You left the entire ball?" she asked. "Yes." Hundreds of people. Approximately 400. Despite herself, Clara almost smiled. "They must be thrilled." Nathaniel's mouth curved faintly. "I suspect several strongly worded conversations are happening right now." The small moment of humor eased something between them. Then Elias stepped forward and carefully opened the ancient book. "Miss Whitmore, there is something you deserve to know." He showed her the faded image of the crescent and 7 stars. Clara looked from the page to the seal. Identical. Beneath the drawing were 3 ancient words. "What does it say?" she whispered. Elias glanced at Nathaniel. The king answered instead. "Alpha King's Luna." Clara became very still. Nathaniel immediately continued. "It does not mean I have come to claim you." Her eyes lifted to his. "Then what does it mean?" "That is what I intend to discover." He paused. "But only if you choose to discover it with me." Clara looked down at the mysterious seal. All her life, other people had decided where she belonged. Now destiny itself seemed to be opening a door, yet the man standing before her refused to push her through it. And for the first time that night, Clara wondered whether the rarest thing about an Alpha King was not his power, but knowing when not to use it. Clara did not answer immediately. She looked past Nathaniel toward the snow-covered drive, where the royal guards remained far enough away to give them privacy. Everything about the night felt impossible, yet the choice before her was remarkably simple. She could follow a mystery because everyone expected her to, or she could decide what she needed before taking another step. "If I go with you," she said, What exactly happens? Nathaniel seemed pleased by the question. We return to Silverpine Palace. Elias examines the seal and the oldest records. You learn whatever we learn. And the mating ball. Over. Clara blinked. You ended it? I cannot hold a ceremony meant to recognize choice after discovering that yours was taken away. The words settled somewhere deeper than Clara expected. For years, people had mistaken her quietness for agreement. Margaret chose where she sat. Vanessa decided which gatherings she attended. Even kindness had sometimes been demanded from her, as though being gentle meant having no boundaries. Clara looked directly at Nathaniel. And if that symbol says I am supposed to become your Luna? Then a symbol has given us information, not permission. Elias lowered his gaze, almost hiding a smile. Nathaniel continued. I do not know you, Clara. You do not know me. Destiny may introduce two people. It cannot manufacture trust between them. Something warm moved beneath Clara's ribs, but this time it had nothing to do with the seal. Then I will come to the palace, she said. Nathaniel offered his hand, then stopped before reaching for hers. Clara noticed. She placed her hand in his by choice. The silver seal flashed once. A strange sensation passed through her, deeper than warmth. For one brief instant, she felt something beneath Nathaniel's calm exterior. Not dominance, not pride, loneliness. A vast, carefully guarded loneliness. Clara released his hand in surprise. Nathaniel frowned. Are you all right? Yes. She was not certain. Before she could explain, carriage wheels sounded beyond the gate. Another vehicle swept into the drive. Margaret, Vanessa, and Haley had returned. Vanessa stepped out first, still dressed in crimson, then stopped when she saw Nathaniel standing beside Clara. Margaret followed and immediately understood how badly the evening had changed. Haley remained near the carriage door. Your Majesty, Margaret began. Surely this misunderstanding can be resolved. Clara felt Nathaniel's attention sharpen, but he said nothing. He looked at her instead. He was letting her speak. Vanessa turned toward Clara. You have no idea what you are getting involved in. Clara studied her stepsister and felt that strange perception again. Beneath Vanessa's anger was something smaller. Fear. Clara suddenly understood. Vanessa had not burned the invitation because she believed Clara was worthless. She had burned it because some part of her feared Clara might be seen. You were afraid, Clara said quietly. Vanessa stiffened. Of you? Never. Not of me. Of being overlooked. Vanessa's face changed. Clara could have humiliated her then. Nathaniel would have listened. The guards would have obeyed. Instead, Clara turned to the king. I want one thing before I leave. Name it. Change the rule. Margaret stared at her. Clara continued. No family should be allowed to control whether an invited Omega attends a royal ceremony. If the invitation belongs to her, the decision belongs to her. Nathaniel regarded Clara for a long moment. Done. Vanessa looked stunned. Clara did not feel victorious. She felt free. Haley finally stepped forward. Clara, I should have stopped her. Clara met her eyes. Yes, you should have. Haley swallowed. Clara's voice remained gentle. I can forgive you without pretending it did not matter. Nathaniel watched her with quiet respect. Elias, however, was staring at the Luna seal. It had begun glowing again, brighter than before. He opened the ancient book with trembling fingers. Your Majesty. Nathaniel turned. Elias pointed to a nearly faded line beneath the old symbol. I think we misunderstood the inscription. Clara moved closer. What does it actually say? Elias looked at her with wonder and unease. The Alpha King's Luna was never chosen because she stood beside his power. He paused. She was chosen because she could hear the truth beneath it. The ride to Silverpine Palace began beneath a sky washed pale by moonlight. Clara sat opposite Nathaniel while Elias occupied the seat beside her, the ancient book resting carefully across his knees. The Luna seal remained warm in Clara's hand. She could still remember the loneliness she had sensed beneath Nathaniel's calm, and the memory unsettled her more than the royal carriage, the guards, or the impossible symbol that refused to burn. What did that line mean? Clara asked. Elias adjusted his spectacles. I believe your gift once had a name. Moonheart Resonance. Clara repeated the words softly. That sounds very grand for someone who spent this evening making tea. Nathaniel smiled. Elias did not. The oldest records suggest it was extraordinarily rare. An alpha could command obedience, but an Alpha King's Luna could sense what existed beneath instinct and rank. Fear beneath anger. Devotion beneath duty. Truth beneath carefully chosen words. Clara thought of Vanessa, then the frightened fox, then Nathaniel. I have noticed things about people all my life. Noticed? Elias asked. Felt them, sometimes. I assumed I was observant. Elias looked toward Nathaniel. Perhaps you were both. When they reached Silver Pine Palace, the ballroom had emptied, leaving only extinguished candles and abandoned flowers. Nathaniel did not take Clara there. Instead, Elias led them through the royal library to a narrow stone corridor hidden behind a shelf of historical records. At its end stood a white door without a handle. 7 stars had been carved around a crescent moon. Clara stopped. That is my seal. Yes, Elias whispered. This chamber has been closed for 317 years. Nathaniel examined the stone. No key. None ever found. Clara approached. The seal in her palm began to shine. She lifted it toward the crescent carved into the door. Before metal touched stone, a soft sound echoed through the corridor. The door opened. Cool air drifted from darkness beyond. Inside was a circular archive no larger than 20 feet across. Moonlight entered through a narrow opening in the ceiling, illuminating shelves of sealed manuscripts. At the center stood a stone table bearing 2 carved figures. One wore a crown. The other held a crescent surrounded by 7 stars. Clara moved closer. Beneath them, an inscription remained surprisingly clear. Elias translated aloud. Strength without truth becomes fear. Truth without compassion becomes judgment. Together, they guard the pack. Nathaniel looked at Clara. Neither spoke. Elias began examining the shelves. These records could change everything we know about the first royal line. Clara touched the edge of the stone table. A sudden wave of emotion passed through her. Grief. Urgency. A promise left unfinished. She pulled her hand away. Someone was afraid in this room. Elias turned. 3 centuries ago? I do not know how I know. Nathaniel came closer, but stopped at a respectful distance. What else do you feel? Clara closed her eyes. Beneath the grief was another sensation. Protection. Someone had hidden these records not to destroy them, but to keep them from someone else. She opened her eyes. The history was not forgotten. Her voice dropped. It was concealed. Elias searched the nearest shelf until he found a thin silver-bound volume. His expression changed as he read its final entry. The last recorded Alpha King's Luna did not die. Nathaniel stepped beside him. What happened to her? Elias turned the next page. Empty. Then Clara noticed something carved into the wall behind the shelves. 3 wolves stood beneath a full moon. The first wore the king's crown. The second bore the 7-star crescent. The third had no name, because someone had carefully erased it. Clara felt the Luna seal turn cold for the first time. Elias stared at the missing symbol. This is impossible. Nathaniel's voice became quiet. What is? Elias looked from the erased wolf to Clara. Every surviving legend says there were 2 sacred powers at the beginning of the kingdom. He raised the old manuscript. This room says there were 3. For several seconds, no one moved. Clara stared at the third wolf carved into the ancient wall, its identity deliberately removed while the figures beside. It remained untouched. The mystery should have frightened her. Instead, Moonheart Resonance gave her something quieter beneath the uncertainty. A warning, yes, but also patience. Whatever truth had slept here for 3 centuries did not need to be solved in a single night. Elias carefully closed the silver-bound volume. I will search every surviving archive, he said. There may be references outside the royal collection. Nathaniel nodded. Quietly. Until we understand why this history was concealed, we do not announce what we found. Clara looked at him. You are asking me to keep a royal secret. I am asking what you think we should do. Again, the distinction mattered. Clara studied the erased figure. Learn before we judge. Whoever hid this room may have had a reason. Nathaniel's expression softened with approval. Then that is what we do. They returned to the main library as the first gray hint of dawn touched the eastern windows. Clara expected exhaustion. Instead, she felt strangely awake. Nathaniel stopped beside a tall window overlooking the snowy palace grounds. There is another matter. Clara waited. The Luna seal. He looked directly at her. Elias can explain what history believed you might become. I cannot tell you what you must become. Clara understood. You are not going to ask me to accept the title? Not tonight. Why? Nathaniel gave a quiet breath that was almost a laugh. Because you were denied one choice yesterday. I will not begin today by taking another. Clara felt that unexpected warmth again, but no magic accompanied it. This belonged entirely to her. Then ask me something smaller. Nathaniel considered her words. Will you stay at Silverpine for a while and help me understand what we found? Clara smiled. Yes. He offered his hand. This time she took it without hesitation. The instant their fingers met, silver light moved across the Luna seal. Nathaniel's ring answered. Yet Clara felt something more important than magic beneath his composure. Hope. Careful, uncertain hope. You are afraid I will regret coming, she said softly. Nathaniel looked startled. Moonheart Resonance. Maybe. Clara's smile deepened. Or maybe. You are easier to read than you think. For the first time, Nathaniel laughed. The sound was warm and surprisingly ordinary. Later that morning, his first decree after the unfinished mating ball crossed the Northern Territories. From that day forward, every royal invitation belonged solely to the person whose name appeared upon it. No parent, guardian, pack leader, or relative could surrender, conceal, or refuse it on her behalf. At Whitmore House, Haley read the decree twice. Vanessa said nothing. Margaret quietly folded the paper. Clara had been given the opportunity to punish them, but she had chosen something harder and wiser. She changed the rule that had allowed the wrong to happen. Forgiveness did not erase responsibility. Power did not require revenge. And love, Clara was beginning to understand, was strongest when it protected another person's freedom. Near sunrise, she and Nathaniel returned once more to the hidden archive. The ancient door opened at Clara's touch. This time, the carved figures of the Alpha King and his Luna glowed faintly beneath the moonstone ceiling. Nathaniel stood beside her, not ahead of her. Clara looked toward the erased third wolf. For one brief moment, a symbol appeared where its name had once been, something neither of them had seen before. Elias stepped closer and went completely still. I know that mark, he whispered. Clara turned. From where? Elias looked toward the oldest sealed section of the archive. From a prophecy the first kings were commanded never to open. Deep behind the stone wall, something answered with a soft click. A hidden door had unlocked.